Cool. All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Be That 1% podcast. Today, I'm joined by a dear friend, Paleta, who I had the pleasure of meeting 2 years ago at Warrior Retreats. For those of you who are kind of new to me and to the podcast and to what I do, you may not have heard me talk about Warrior before, but Warrior is an incredible rite of passage journey in Peru that was created by our dear brother Brandon Collinsworth. And the 15 to 17-day trek from the Amazon to the Andes is a one-of-one experience that is so potent and powerful that thousands of people have just wanted to be a part of it. And every year it's super selective, and only a certain amount of spots come, and Brandon has been a visionary in that way. And so in 2023, both as facilitators, Paletta and I first met, and we instantly dropped in. And from the moment I kind of saw Paletta, you can tell that she's very on the path of wanting to have her presence be the message, and very clear that she's done a lot of inner work. And then when you start to get to know her even more, you start finding out these cool little stories. And our relationship over the last 2 years has been really cool to witness and observe from my perspective of seeing her grow and myself grow. And so we thought it'd be cool to kind of capture one, the last 2 years, but also what we're anticipating building in the future, not necessarily together in a collaboration sense, but more so independently as we're both on our own paths seeking the truth. And so if you don't know who Paletta is, she is a movement artist, choreographer, and she has worked with artists and performers, helping them tap into more of their truth, their embodied truth. She's worked with Nike. She's worked with really well-known artists, one of which is in London, UK, named Ray, who's a pop artist, jazz artist. And they have been doing a lot of work together, and that's really cool to see. And more importantly, she is helping leaders sharpen their voice, finding that inner clarity to be able to express that to the world through art, through conversation, through whatever is calling that individual. So I'm excited to dive into some of the topics that we're going to be talking about today. And thank you, Paletta, for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you for having me, and I'm super excited for this conversation.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's start with some rapid fire questions, if you will. What is a book that you've read, whether it's recently or in the past, that has really shifted the way you think about the world, yourself, or what's possible?
A book. Ooh. Interesting, because I'm always like, messages of the book are more there than actually the name of the book, but literally without thinking too far, it's one of the more recent one. It's called Inner Marriage, and the theme
Mm,
of inner marriage has really shifted a lot in my perspective, how I view myself and how I relate to other people.
mm,
Yeah.
cool. A book you suggest others read?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, good. What is a quote or a philosophy that you live by?
A quote, I was gonna say, literally, as we had a conversation recently before deciding on the date for this podcast. It's like, if you see it, you got it. And I
Hmm.
believe it's from your wife.
Yeah, if you spot
She
it, you
shared,
got it.
yeah, you spot it, you got it. That's exactly it. Yeah. So it's really, that holds a lot of meaning to me. It holds a lot of meaning in a sense as well of, yeah, validating the way I see the world and what I sense and see in others, like the light triggers. You see something outside of yourself and you're like, ooh, this lives within me, so let me nurture that aspect. And the same as, well, I'm triggered by something that's like, oh, a negative trigger, a negative charge to it. So this also, oh, this is where I'm being led to dive deeper, to look at that aspect. What is holding me back there to integrate this part of me?
Mm, thank you. Beautiful. All right. So how I mean, decades, I imagine. How long have you been in the movement space, whether that's dance or expressive movement?
Yeah, yeah, decades. It's
Decades.
so movement and dance is literally, I would say it's my first language. You
Mm.
know, I was as a kid, it started with just dancing at home to the music I loved. I would bring at the time, like my boombox to kindergarten, and all I wanted to do was listen to Michael Jackson and dance and express myself in this way, you know? And yeah, and then went into training martial arts, into training gymnastics, because my body was just like always expressing through movement. It was, now I have the words to say, like, well, it was moving energy that I was picking up. Of course, at
Mm.
the time I didn't know that, but yeah, it helped me regulate. So it's been since I can remember, like 4 years old, that I started gymnastics, and I kept going.
Yeah. How important do you think the relationship to one's body in the sense of not necessarily understanding the organs and what the muscles do and making sure that the physique is strong, but more specifically, how important the movement of the body is to understanding oneself or being able to hold oneself in a social setting?
Thank you for that question. I loved it. I mean, for me, I was literally just came to me. I want to speak from my experience and
Hmm.
also with the experience that I have from working with a lot of different people, from athletes to artists to one of coming back to movement, from people who are like really out of shape to just come back to find the joy in movement. It's very much like, from my own perspective, I can have the most crumbling day, and the moment I allow myself to actually start to tune into this sensation of feeling crumbled, and to breathe into it and to allow my breath to initiate movement through my body, big or small, it doesn't matter, but immediately I can feel and sense the space that is created, the spaciousness from inside out, and it's changing my whole way of relating to myself. It's changing the way of how I'm like then showing up for the day, or even if it's not in the morning, but you know, the next phase of my day. It's just shifting everything. And through that, I land deeper in my own truth. I allow myself to come back to my own essence, because I am very sensitive to energies. I'm picking up a lot of things, and it's like it's maintenance. It's like brushing my teeth, because if we don't move our bodies, we become stagnant. And I say we become stagnant. Obviously, we can feel it. We start to tense up. We start to become stiff. We get up and like, oh wow, my back, or oh wow, this hurts. But it's also happening on an energetic level, right? Because emotionally we can relate to it. It's like, oh my God, I'm just sinking deeper into this emotion. It's because we're not allowing the emotion to move through us. We're not encouraging to receive whatever emotion is present for us, be it a positive one or more of a, a sadder one, or a griefy one, or shame even. If we're not allowing that to actually move through us, it stays stuck. And eventually that is what is creating this ease, right, in our bodies, and it makes us feel like, wow, something is wrong, we're getting ill, we're getting sick. And yeah, and the last part of the question that you ask, how does it land in relating to others? Well, again, as I said, it allows me to relate from a place of truth, from my truest essence, because I have come back to myself through moving the energy to also release what is maybe not mine, what I'm no longer needing to hold on to, what I'm ready to release. To then meet someone from that place is like, I can actually meet you and be present with you for what wants to arise between us in the present moment. And I'm not preoccupied with either thinking about or feeling things in my body that I haven't given the space to be moved and expressed through me.
It's beautiful. Do you find, and maybe there's a male female component here, but when you share these practices, these ideas with anybody, do you find that there are certain people that are more resistant to what you're saying, or like in general, people are more resistant to moving their bodies, maybe because they don't know how, or how are you sensing people's openness to this?
How am I sensing people's openness to it? Very often, I'm going to start with a place of, yeah, for example, when I'm in the gym and I do my honest practice, it can be quite like, whoa, what's happening over there for people? It's like, can I swear on here? A little bit.
Yeah.
It's like, what the fuck is this? Or what the fuck is she doing? And it's like, I can sense it again because my extra sensors are on, but I'm trying to stay as much as possible in my own zone. So it sparks curiosity because one aspect is that I might feel that I don't actually care if they look or not, also like the confidence that comes with that I had to, yeah, also own and build. And the second thing is, it's just something that like a lot of people have never seen someone maybe having that much range and that much capacity in their bodies to move in different ways. And so it sparks like an interest. And then very often, either people are courageous enough, they come up to me and they ask something when I finish training. And very often the question people would ask is, how did you get so flexible? Or how did you get there? And I'm always taking a moment, I take a breath and I look at them and I'm like, well, how did you get to where you are? For example, if someone's asking me that's very muscular, like very, very well built, I'm like, well, what is it? It's consistency, it's practice, it's discipline, it's devotion, it's dedication, determination and staying with it and honoring that practice for what it is and for how it's positively impacting your life. Right. So it's curiosity for
Yeah.
sure, and also intimidation. I think a lot of people are sometimes like, oh, intimidated. And then
Yeah.
when I start speaking to them and creating a space actually of inviting them into that space, inviting that point of view of like, well, if you want to have more, most of the time, flexibility, because that's what they maybe pick up and are most familiar with terminology wise, then we start to move a bit more in non-linear ways. Let's call it non-linear, right? Not just like lifting and in the gym and doing what we know as linear movement. If you're just listening, I'm doing some linear movement with my body right now. But to actually break out of it, start to go in circles, start to go in waves, start to move between those linear spaces, dropping deeper into the fascia, dropping deeper into the layers beneath skin, and communicate with those and yeah, inviting them in by sharing my truth about it.
Yeah. So I remember reading some research on how diversity of movement leads to diversity of thought, and how people who are a bit more rigid in their thinking tend to have more rigid bodies, and people who are more flexible, more limber, more mobile, tend to be more open or more creative. And that stuck with me because I think anything in nature that's too rigid ultimately cracks and breaks. There is an ebb and flow to life. There's seasonality to life. There's never a if it's stagnant for too long, then death happens or decay starts to happen, and then movement will come again. So movement's like embedded into life. Like if something's not moving, it's not alive. And so the dynamic movement that you're talking about, the non-linear outside the box movement really can also start with outside the box thinking. And that might look like, in a practical sense, not taking the same way to work. A linear way of going from point A to point B. I always take this route. I know exactly how long it's going to take me. It's this stoplight to that stop sign to right, 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 and then I'm at work. Well, what if you take a different route that maybe it adds 2 minutes, but it's a different scenery, and on that new scenery you see a different billboard, and that different billboard inspires a new thought. Like it's just not getting so routine to the point where you lose the intentionality and the meaning behind something. And what you're suggesting is that by moving in this way, whether it's 30 seconds or 30 minutes, that also can begin to unlock different parts of you, whether that's an idea, an emotion that has been trapped in your body somewhere, or you find the right way to articulate something that you've struggled for a long time to try and communicate to yourself or to someone else, and therefore have a new upgraded toolkit to communicate. That's what I'm picking up from what you're saying.
Yeah, I love this. There's two things that come up for me as I'm listening to you. And the concept that I have learned in a container that I was in last year to kind of sum up this theme that you were sharing is radical discontinuity.
Hmm.
Like putting yourself into a space where you are consciously choosing to do something different. Might it just be to brush your teeth with the other hand that you're usually used to? So it adds an extra level of, again, dropping into presence, dropping into awareness of what is actually happening and how much am I contributing to this happening, And then like, oh yeah, like new ideas or new movements are being discovered. So that's how I would sum it up. And the same goes with, yeah, definitely movement and your training and your expression in itself, right? And you were leading that so beautifully with saying like, it can help you even communicate your emotions or something that you haven't been able to communicate before. And I would also add a point that we are now opening up, and I'm so, so grateful for that, that it's becoming more common that you're also able to express yourself without having to use specific words and the right vocabulary all the time. It's okay to stand in front of someone and having a little tantrum, not directed at them, but expressing an emotion in that way, And it's like, for me, I'm really on the journey of also in myself and with other people to be sure that you can hold the space for someone to express themselves in that way, more like non-traditionally, quote unquote, and not take it personal. It's not about you. If I'm having a tantrum, it's because something is moving through me and I need to release it. And then maybe afterwards I can actually tell you, hey, thank you for just holding that space for me. I just needed to move that energy. And I now realize by moving it and by allowing it to come up, this is where it came from. I couldn't access it before in that way.
Yeah, well said. The Something popped in my head, and I'm trying to remember what it was that you were talking about. I was like, yeah, that reminds me of this. It wasn't this, but this was also something I was going to say. There was a question that I found about 6 months ago that I really, really like that speaks to what you're talking about, this intentional, say that word again, intentional what was it?
Radical discontinuity.
Okay, yes, that. Um, the question was, what would happen if you showed up to the space not like how you normally do? Or another way of saying that is like, who are you without who you define yourself most as? Or if you always show up bubbly and talkative, what would happen if you were more introverted and just listened? Like what would emerge? And that question really hit me because like, being in a coaching leadership role, it's so natural for me to step into that space because it's the way that I get to serve. And I've done it for 12, I mean, really my whole life, but as a business, like 13, going on 12, 13 years. And so it's so easy for me to hold space and for me to ask questions and for me to listen. And I went to my grandmother's funeral not too long ago, and everyone's having their own process, and I found myself automatically going up to them and holding space for them. And as I was doing this, I was like, okay, this is cool, James. This is a way for you to help. But also, like, where are you honoring your own process in this? And so I was able to catch myself and then allow, like, distance myself from that and then sit in what I actually was feeling, regardless of what everyone else was doing and going through. And that was a really cool awareness moment that allowed me to shift. But it wouldn't have shifted if I didn't have that idea in my mind to do something different. And because I did something different, I noticed kind of more of my tendency to go to one side as opposed to trying a different way. And that brings new elements and new dynamics to the situation. And so the movement piece, I think, for me has, and working with dancers for the last 10 years, like I see so many different types of movements, and it's amazing. And athletes, like athletes have to be able to precisely move at the right time in the right place in the right sequence. And so there's a lot of training that goes beyond that. And there's something to say about the performance side of movement, whether it's a dance competition or a football game or a basketball game or a soccer game. And then there's the movement that has no end game. The whole point of the movement is to move and just to allow the freedom of that to then be the guider. And I think for a lot of people who are very control oriented or want to have something make sense are going to have a hard time entering that space because it's so unfamiliar, and there's no like definitive outcome, or there's no clear measurement of like, am I doing it right, or am I, how much longer? It's something that you just have to throw yourself into and allow it to evolve naturally.
Mm. Thank you so much for all of this. I have so much curiosities and questions for you as well to, yeah, what did you notice in yourself, and where, when you were in that moment of like, oh yeah, I'm going into like something very familiar, but then I'm dismissing actually my opportunity to be in my own process. And I want to just honor that as well, because this is something that a lot of people that are in helping and supportive roles in their lives, they have, right? It's a little, I'm not saying this is you, but there's an archetype or something called the savior complex that comes so naturally for us. That's like, because I can, I'm going to offer that help, or just because I can, I'm just going to hold that space, right? And then it's really the thing of like, well, where's like the underlying current coming from, where does that come from? And what does it shift, exactly as you were saying, when I actually step back from that, and can I hold the same space I hold for someone else for my own process? And very often what we then realize is, I cannot, or I feel limited, or it feels really uncomfortable. And then can I sit with this uncomfort? Can I increase my capacity to hold space for myself in the same way I step out and hold space for someone else?
Yeah, I think what's coming through for me is that the inner journey of moving from what the external requires of me or demands from me versus what I want to show up as. And it's like an external shift to an internal shift. And we talked about a concept, last week when we spoke, which was beyond performance, right? Like there are these performative tendencies and behaviors that we all do. It's part of our ego, it's part of how we get love and respect and all of that. And I think that there's a deeper, more aligned way to go about that, and not so much of I have to be this to get that, but I want to be this because this is who I am, and then how everything falls after that is just how it falls. And so that journey is a really hard one because familial dynamics, expectations, societal norms, all of these are invisible rules that we've accepted or allowed to run our lives for order or for sense making. And when you disrupt that, chaos happens. And people are not very good with chaos. So they stick with what they know, even if what they know is not good for them, even if what they know is something they don't really want, but they know it. And it's better to know something than to not know something. So then we kind of trap ourselves into what always has been or what always was. And we're more blocked in welcoming in something that's always been there, but we just haven't allowed ourselves to access.
Mm, yes, 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 yes. So juicy. And I would love to create a translation of terminology in a way that into a map that I've been working with and diving really deep over the last year, and also the book that I referred to in the beginning, Sacred Marriage, Sacred Inner Marriage. It's a lot about masculine and feminine polarity and dark and light polarities, right? And basically what we're also describing here, it's a very evident thing that is happening in our society, which is a patriarchal society that is very much, I would say, even scared of the true dark feminine essence, which is the chaos, which is the trust in the unknown, which is the trust in the unseen, in the mystery of not knowing where things are going and still really going for it, going all in, without it being super clear, this is the end goal, which is the beautiful light masculine aspect. Light masculine aspect is deeply precise, it's deeply like directional, it's visionary, it's consciousness, you know, it's everything from the heart upwards. It's what can hold incredible space for someone to just be in deep presence from the heart, you know. But it's also when it's in the shadow, it's what's becoming extremely judgmental to everything that is outside of the linearity that that directionality provides. It becomes extremely judgmental of anything that doesn't operate the way it sees it's the optimum way to go about things, right? So it's like dismissing that. It's putting it deeper into the shadow. And that is on the opposite polarity of that, we find the dark feminine. And as I said before, it's the chaos. It's the creative chaos. It's destruction. The dark feminine is also about destroying to rebuild. It's pure transformation. And there's so much juice there, but we are just not, we're not used to honoring that in the same way as we honor something that is very clear, very directional, and very reliable in that way. You know, if we shift that into more of the dark feminine, let's call this the non-linear realm to bring it back to movement as well, it will be incredibly what comes out of it, but it's just not clear from the beginning of where it's going.
Yeah. And in the West, particularly in America, we don't get rewarded for those sides, right? And so the incentive to want to explore them is not as high because we've been trained to not find it valuable. Our status doesn't necessarily increase with that, or at least, you know, they haven't bridged that gap. Productivity, effectiveness, money, you know, all of these things that we use in our society in the West mostly, uh, they are geared towards those more masculine traits of like goal oriented, optimization, being effective, grind, go, get it now, do it. And what I feel that there's a groundswell happening is that more holistic integration of recognizing that there's power on both sides. I don't think you and I are saying that goal orientedness and directiveness is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a beautiful thing. And when it's taken too far, like anything, then you become too rigid. And when the seasons of life, the seasons of earth start
Mm.
coming, there needs to be some layer and level of flexibility to be able to manage the change that always happens. And what once worked may not work again. And so that openness, that exploration, that's why artists are so important in culture, is because they are willing to go into the unknown and figure things out. and fumble. I think that's what true art is. If you're not doing that, I don't know if you're an artist. The whole point of art is to leap and not know how it's going to go. And then you come back with a story to tell that then informs the rest of us on how we can maybe integrate that moving forward. But just to tie the loop on like why most people don't explore that, I think one, it's scary. Two, it's a commitment, and three, it's not necessarily rewarded as much as it should be.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I would love to also link back in to make sure the listeners are not quote unquote
Yeah,
misinterpreting.
interpreting. Yeah.
Sorry, English is not my first language. But it's not about picking sides or saying that one is good and the other is bad, in a sense of me also mentioning the patriarchy, And I love that. I mean, we can get into that later, but I'm deeply devoted to the masculine,
Hmm.
deeply, deeply devoted to the masculine qualities and attributes, and in such deep, yeah, just appreciation of what the masculine provides in our world, in people, and in the men in our world. And when they integrate all of these aspects, also the feminine within them, then how integrating the feminine within a man can support your own inner masculine to be even more embodied and in truth and moving from truth. That is honestly like the something I'm deeply passionate about, and definitely to bring that back, to not misinterpret. Okay, something like that. I deeply honor and love the masculine and goal orientation and all the attributes that come with that.
Yeah, yeah, and kind of, on the what when you're talking about this duality, right? The structure and non-structure, chaos and order, if you will. I also have been going on a personal journey, and this is something I've talked to Brandon about, the performative side of how we operate and the desire, like there's a hero and then there's a villain, but then there's also the anti-hero. And I feel like this phase of my life that I'm in right now, I'm more drawn to the anti-hero approach, where it's like I don't want to be a hero for hero's sake. I want to be the person that holds you to the standard that you say you want. I want to be the person that speaks the truth even when it's uncomfortable. I want to be the person who does the right thing, even if 99% of the people are doing the exact opposite, and those are hard things to do, and often are misunderstood because they're not going along with the popularity of what's happening. And so this anti-hero energy that I've been really cultivating and doing my best to operate in has helped me kind of incorporate new elements into my leadership: intuition, listening, stillness, uh, speaking on truths that maybe I wouldn't say before because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, or I don't want it to land too harshly. But now I'm just delivering it. I'm starting to I notice these activations starting to happen, and it's really good. And in correlation with that, I'm finding that I'm able to honor boundaries better. I'm able to communicate with my kids more effectively. I'm able to read the moment and decide which element inside of me needs to support this situation the best. And, a lot of that is compound effect of this just being in the field and doing the reps and committing daily. But also, I think it's this other layer that we're talking about here is incorporating both sides and again, not being so one dimensional or rigid.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for that. And I feel very deeply connected to this. And even, when I speak about the masculine and the feminine,
Hmm.
it's really like I always speak as well from the perspective of how I've been able to connect, which I call my inner man, my like who would be your brother, basically.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's that brotherhood between, doesn't matter what gender we're born in, that sees you so deeply in what you were just saying right now and feels you so much, because it's like, I feel I feel seen and I feel like you want to bring me with you. And that's true brotherhood. That's like, that's synergy, you know? When you're really integrated in your masculine, it's not about competition anymore.
Hmm.
Competition, healthy competition is also integrated masculine, because it's like, yeah, like this drives me. This is what's pushing me. Like it's motivating me. But when it becomes unhealthy competition, it goes into more bigger ego states. That's when it becomes unintegrated, right? And it goes more into like a shadow aspect of it. That's the part that wants to go to the top by itself and doesn't want to bring anyone around, because the top is mine and I'm the one, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's that aspect that is integrated, that has understood, like, I get to be the best and I get to bring my brothers along, and I want them to be the best, because that's like the reflection. When I see them being at their best, I know I'm at my best.
Right.
That's what's going. You're smiling. I
It's
love it.
communal. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
community vibe. There's not
And
silos.
yeah, and the deeper aspects as well of being able to connect to a more integrated masculine within you or within me is because of connecting deeper also to the feminine qualities, like you were saying, like not dismissing the parts of you that are more nurturing, not dismissing the parts of you that are very giving, but allowing them and integrating them and connecting to them and bringing them through in a healthy way that then doesn't go into overgiving. Then the masculine steps in and creates very clear boundaries. I'm available for this long, and I'm going to be present with all my heart, all my ear, all my senses to be with you. And after that time, we're closing this container, we're closing this conversation, and we both get to move on to the next thing. And that's what I as well have been like really dropping into, and I've been like honoring my inner man in that way. You know, he's been helping me so much with having super strong and clear boundaries, honoring my boundaries and not feeling bad about my boundaries, because that's then like the other like aspect of the people pleasing and more
Hmm.
the unhealthy light feminine aspect that comes into the space and starts talking to like, oh no, I should be doing more, or like, oh no, like he's gonna, or they are gonna think so, you know, they're gonna think about the consequences of them not over giving. Whilst the masculine, especially the dark masculine aspect of what you beautifully shared, is like vroom, presence, direction, precision. Oh, I love precision. You know, the precision of like, okay, we're devoting this and this much time to this now, wrap it up, going to the next thing. And that allows for then whatever container you're creating of a conversation, of a, you know, a devotional time to a certain project, then you get to play more with the nonlinear realms within the content of the conversation or the project.
Hmm.
You are also giving more space to maybe a feminine aspect of you to come forward and be creative and be playful with it, because you have created the container of, in this case, maybe a time frame, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I just love that we're talking about the masculine and feminine side, everybody, because when we look at today's leadership, whether it's, governmental, countrywide, or even inside organizations, I think the most effective leaders that I have studied have an internal clarity about how they operate, and that clarity then shows up outward in their ability to communicate, whether it's a vision, holding someone accountable, or just sharing a vulnerable truth. There's that aspect, and there's many ways to build that clarity. But then there's also a deep understanding of people and how they operate. And that understanding allows them to utilize the tools that they've cultivated to enroll them, to motivate them, to release them, to encourage them to push boundaries and do things that they have never done before. And sometimes that obviously gets taken to extremes, and there's always going to be the one-offs. But generally, though that level of versatility is what we need more of, and it isn't until you do some of the things that we are talking about here, movement, practicing, doing things differently on purpose, messing it up intentionally, small ways and maybe big ways if the situation and context calls for that. Journaling, meditating, these are ancient practices that have been around for long periods of time, and very successful individuals on multiple fronts and in multiple domains have done these and have spoken about these. And it's just like, when are we gonna really find the time, create the time, allocate the time to actually explore this? And someone may be thinking, well, what's the upside, James? Like, why? Quality of life, maybe be the biggest one. The health of your heart health, your body health, your mental health, your spiritual health. Movement is tied to that, whether it's actually going to the gym, going for a walk, or dancing. Your relationships improve. The more flexible and open you are, the more understanding you can be. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be a walkover, or you're going to be someone that just gets pushed over because you're just trying to understand everything. But it means you'll know what to do and how to do it and the dose that's needed. And and then I think you'll be more susceptible or more open to explore the unknowns without having to know how it all is going to end. And that lights people up, I think. It brings more vitality to life, more life force begins to activate. And when we're too stagnant for too long, or we can predict well, we can't really predict, but we give ourselves the illusion that we can predict. And if we stay there too long, then we ultimately stagnate. And that stagnation, again, leads to quote unquote death. And so, I mean, I think that's the upside to everything that we're kind of talking about right now.
Yeah, and I would also add to that of what my devotion is in my life is my devotion to truth. And that might sound weird for someone who's like super happy in their life, how things are, it's like, oh yeah, everything is fine. But is it though? Like, is it? Do you feel like you're really at that place where you are giving yourself the opportunity to be in your full expression, in your full truth, in the way that you choose to live your life right now? And if the answer is yes, I'm not going to argue with you. And then maybe even that conversation is not for you, and that is also fine. However, if there is a part of you, even the smallest part of you, that feels like a stirring and activation by everything that we're talking about, then you know that there's a deeper layer of your unique truth to access. And that's the invitation. If you sense that, even just listening to me right now and hearing this, if you feel, oof, okay, yeah, even if it's a bit uncomfortable, and it probably will be on the journey to deeper truth, I can tell you that, but it's like, yeah, are you willing to take the first step? It can be a small one, but are you willing to take that first step? And in that journey of that you were so beautifully saying, and all these practices that we've already like summoned in a way, or you summarized, the invitation as well from my end and through this body that I have been born into, that I learned about by staying devoted to my truth that is coming through my body and understanding how truth feels in my body, has been so much about to not bypass my own physical body and my own existence in this physical world, but to go deeper into it. And I speak as well, I'm very aware, I speak from a very privileged place in a way that I have a very able body. I have I have an incredible, I'm very healthy, and I'm aware that not everyone is on the same page on that. And I want to honor that as well in this conversation. And there's the invitation of, what can I do that brings me joy, that is including my body right now? And it might be just playing a song that you haven't heard in a long time, or that you used to listen to when you were younger, and have a little bop. and have a little bop, have a little sway, have a little moment of just enjoying the song, your body will naturally respond and it will express joy. And giving that the same meaning and giving that the same attention and worthiness as going somewhere and even do journaling for that matter, the practice that we mentioned earlier. Journaling is amazing and it's allowing us from what's in our head to bring it down into paper. And the invitation as well from my end is not so much to just stay on the approach of top down as like the bottom up, the ascending path, yeah, from down upwards, but also coming from upwards back down into the body,
Mm-hmm.
the descending path. And that is a lot that we are actually, yeah, speaking into, because this also includes the chaos of the body, the ugliness and the ugly processes sometimes that happen with and through our bodies. And I say ugly in a quote unquote sense because it's beautiful, but it's deemed ugly in our society sometimes, being in the messiness again of our own physical experience and even emotional experience.
Mm-hmm. There's a term in internal family system, which is a therapeutic framework and modality where, there's a whole bunch of family members, quote unquote, inside your body, and they're all trying to compete for your attention. And those that get casted off, I forget the actual term of what those quote unquote types of people are in you, but anything that you shun away actually ends up having more power because they're going to do more and more crazy things to try and get your attention. And so it's kind of like when people don't feel like they're included, they're going to try everything in their power to try and be included. And they may do violent things. They may do things that they would never do. But because they were quote unquote outcasted or weren't acknowledged or accepted or seen, that opens the door to all kinds of erratic behavior. And so the moment that you can sit there and see all the parts of you and say, look, yeah, these are some maybe unacceptable parts to societal terms, and I don't necessarily have to act these out, but the acknowledgement that they're there and that I'm capable of them is extremely valuable and powerful because it again increases your capacity to hold a lot. Diversity, fear, unknown, conflict, challenge, joy, happiness, all of this comes from all of these parts in you that you may not at this moment know are there until you create the space for it. And so that's what kind of brought, when you were saying that, it brought that up. And the truth piece, like beyond the performance, is truth. And I'd love for you in a minute to talk about, since you've embodied that truth or embodying more of that truth, what have you noticed shift in your life, in your relationships, in your business, in, what your day to day, what have you noticed? So throwing that to you, but I want to complete this thought for a second. There's an idea that I talk about a lot called one of one, idea of one of one. You are one of one, right? And in this world, we have a lot of duplicates, a lot of copy pastes, and we don't need more of those. And when you can understand that there is only one you, as metaphorical and as woo-woo as that sounds, but also how factual and how literal that is too, I think you begin to take some of that power back or attract more of that power to you to then have a bit more courage to say, yeah, if I am one of one, then there's only one way that I can do what only I could do. Let me see what that is. Because right now I may not be doing that, or I may have done it before, but now I don't do that anymore. And wherever you're at, you are one of one, and that is a superpower. And it's the sooner you tap into that, allow space for that, the more impactful, and not even take it the impact away, the more meaningful it's going to be from you to you. And I think that's the most important piece because if it's meaningful to you, it's going to attract the right opportunities, the right people, and the right situations.
Bam. Yeah. Okay. The first thing that came up for me when you asked me, well, what has changed, what has shifted, since stepping deeper into embodying my truth, I would, I would actually ask back, like, what has not shifted and what has not changed, And it's not like it was from one day to the other. Like, once I realized I'm really in this path now, I looked back on my journey and everything started to make sense on why I made certain decisions, why certain things happened in my life. It was preparing me. It was preparing me to even be able to step into that space and being confronted as well with my own truth, because it's not just like, yay, truth, it's like, oh my god, I've been waiting for you all my life, kind of, but also in a way of like, oh fuck, you're here now.
Hmm.
And this is gonna mean sacrifice. Not sacrifice as in like, oh, it's a choice, and it's like biggest sacrifices. It's sacrifices that are in alignment with my devotion to truth, that are not easy in the emotional realm. It doesn't mean they are going to be easy. A lot of me was about letting go of things and of people and of a whole life that I had built. My career in London, like living 9 years in London, working as a movement artist, a choreographer, having built my network. And then 2 years prior to leaving, so 7 years into being in London already, I knew there was a voice in me that constantly spoke to me like, this chapter is coming to an end soon. Chapter is coming to an end soon. And I was like, and I was scared of that. I didn't want to let go. And I felt like, I have more to give here, like this thing that we were saying earlier, like even my energy is needed here. I have more to give. I have more to give. But then it's like, and I mean, I'm happy to speak about this. In beginning of 2023, I did have what probably people would consider a bit of a breakdown. And it showed itself by really confronting me with like, okay, because I've been making declarations of the kind of work I wanted to do, beyond the movement realm that I've been in, the deep transformational spaces that I want to hold for people. And then it was literally like coming in, and it was like the level of transformation and the depth of transformation you're going to be able to hold for people is immense. However, your turn first. And in the way where I was like, I was already doing a lot of deep work. I was doing the things that I was like intuitively guided to, but then it hit a whole nother level. That's when it was like, okay, I mean, this is the year that I left London. This is the year I came to Warrior for the first time. This is the year that I sat with plant medicine for the first time. And also so much has changed from that for sure. But then the continuation of integration and just honoring, coming back to maybe the movement and the body aspect for me, I knew even deeper when I was making a decision that is aligned with my truth and where I'm headed, and when not. When I'm saying yes to a job that comes in, but it's actually not in alignment anymore. Or even, like in the artist space and self-employed and creative spaces, sometimes the money is a real struggle.
Hmm.
And not just in those spaces, but I want to speak on it because you sometimes fight for the littlest payment for something that you have invested, as we said earlier, decades in. And to then having to have fights almost to just get the minimum for what you deserve, it feels very degrading. And then there was also very clear evidence in that, like my confidence from saying no to things that just didn't feel in alignment anymore was way up. And the consequences, the sacrifice was maybe, yes, that paycheck, and maybe, yes, that opportunity to network again, but it also gave me time and space to stay devoted to my truth and dig deeper.
Hmm. Yeah, it's, it's true. I mean, what I keep coming back to is that the truth of the truth is that it is, it might end a marriage
Yeah.
or it might strengthen it. It might give birth to an opportunity that takes care of your family for generations. or it will feel like you're getting buried further, and I think the path of truth and people can even argue that like your truth is different than my truth and what's the difference between your truth and universal truth, and so then you can start going down that rabbit hole. And I think the important thing is going back to like that inner clarity that I observed in the leaders that I truly respect and admire for what they've been able to do in the world, both in a political sense, a religious sense, a business sense, a relational sense, is that inner clarity. And that inner clarity, I do believe, is heavily tied to truth. And your truth, although it might not be a universal truth, is your truth, and that is worth something. How much? We don't know, but it's worth the most to you. And if someone really wants to know you, and if you really want to show someone who you are to know if they're truly committed to being in your life and you to their life, then I think the pay that's demanded in that moment is the truth. And that short-term discomfort of the risk of saying something you can't take back that could disrupt everything is also what could give birth to the greatest thing that you've ever imagined. And that is terrifying because it's a 50-50 split. And it's like, I don't know, is it gonna is it gonna work out or is it not? We'll see. We'll see. But I think even beyond that, it will eventually because you're honoring what's most true for you. I think that's what we kind of gotta come back to.
Yeah, and maybe to bring it back exactly of the beautiful segment you shared earlier is like be that 1%. Be that 1% that is willing to take the risk to allow yourself to go so deep into your truth that you might be the odd one, that 1% standing out of the crowd and going against the grain.
Hmm.
And that doesn't mean, like it's if I know, yeah. It's just beautiful how there's so many different ways of saying the same thing, and that might make it actually a universal truth. Maybe a universal truth is that we're all here to live our own unique truth. And I would argue, and I feel that that is true in my body,
Hmm.
you know. And it's like how does, if we think about it, like even of spirit, and then it's like boom, an explosion from spirit, and then there's all these little pieces of spirit that are maybe now us, and we all carry a part of actually the same spirit. But what the beautiful thing is, we've been given this vessel to bring it back to the body again, this unique constellation of atoms and molecules and the mass that's been building through that looks looks very unique, that talks very unique, that experiences things very in unique ways, and that grows up. All of these little beings grow up in many different ways that then also impact us, how we continue to grow and perceive and express. Yet there has been something, yeah, and maybe that's a personal truth. Something has been implemented into us that wants to be expressed through us, through this unique vessel that we've been given and that we get to experience life through.
Hmm.
What a blessing, and even when I speak about it in this way myself, it's like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Hmm.
thinking about situations in my life where this honesty and truth was scary initially and then ended up being the best thing that it could be. Even though it may have temporarily been hard, it ultimately was better for me. There's a few distinct examples. One was deciding to do what I'm doing now, in 2014. Like I had no mentor, no one was showing me how to create this business. It was pure passion. And I went door knocking, door after door after door after door after door. And I got no's every day, hundreds of no's. Cops called on me. People laughed in my face. People were like, "You're too young. What are you doing here?" And it hurt. It was hard. It was heavy. I thought about quitting multiple times. I almost did. But the something in me was just like, just keep going again. I know it sucks, but like just one step in front of the other. And and it felt like I was being pulled, and then 6 months in, I met someone that then changed the trajectory of my career, and then Amanda, my wife, like how we met, the truth there was like I had just come off of a bad breakup. It was 6 years long. I was hurt. I didn't want to go through that hurt again. So I had to be honest with Amanda about what I wanted, what I needed, who I was, where I was going. And I told that to her 2 weeks in. I said, look, if you're not about this, then I don't think we're going to fit. And that was terrifying because she literally was everything that I wanted. On a list of qualities that I wrote out, she had almost every quality. This was literally what I believe the woman I manifested, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, now risking it because I had to tell her what who I was and what I wanted at 22. Hard. But 14 years later, here we are, you know? And then in 2023, in October, to get this idea to do an international immersive experience in Costa Rica. First time I've ever done something like that. And it felt so divine. And to honor that nudge now has resulted in over 2 dozen leaders coming to Costa Rica and going to these powerful lands and changing the community's lives through the philanthropy work that we do down there. Like all of that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't follow those nudges and I wasn't still enough to notice that initially subtle pull, you know? And also the clarity that I had been cultivating through the years by just knowing the values that I want my life to be centered around. And so again, it comes back to like that inner clarity, the work of removing the noise and then allowing that truth to come through and honoring the truth when it does and not turning away. I think one of the biggest things that people can know if they're like living in alignment is like when you look in the mirror, how do you feel? Like when you look into your own eyes, do you look away because you're like, because you're not honoring something or you're not living up to your standard or whatever? Or do you look in your eyes and you be like, this is wild and this is fun and this is so cool. Thank you. My goodness. Like that is such a cool moment that no one else will know about. That is so intimate and so personalized that like that moment is a really good soul check moment.
I'm smiling over here because I'm like, fuck yes to being able to, yeah, look in the mirror into your own reflection and being like, and not just like big talk yourself, and being like, you got this, let's go. But you're like, I see you. I
Hmm.
really see you. And I'm like, I'm here for this ride. Let's keep going. And I honor you deeply. And like, oh, and this is also like where you start to, yeah, when you've gone into like the shadows more, you've gone into like seeing also the aspects of you, and as you were saying, through the system of internal family systems, like the people in you that you're a bit more like, bro, don't come out. Like I don't want to
Stay
relate
in the
with you,
closet.
stay there. That's just another term of the shadow aspects of us, and we're like, when you actually go and meet them and you see them, they're acting out because you're not giving them also attention and awareness and acceptance. And once you start to do more and more of this work, it's easier and easier to step in front of the mirror and be like, even those parts I love, and even those parts, I'm here for you, and let's keep going. And I
Hmm.
feel you, and I feel you on the journey with me, and you're actually part of it as well. You're not dismissed and left behind. You're with me on that. And I actually wanted to talk on something that you shared before, because like that inner clarity you were speaking about, keep coming back to inner clarity.
Hmm.
And at 22 years old, for you to going and knocking on doors and then meeting Amanda, love the way you speak about your wife and how you meet or how you met. It's beautiful. That to bring it back to how we started the conversation as well, if you can remember, did movement and moving your body at that time contribute to you having that inner clarity? You know, it might have been through traditional sports or in any different way, but I'd be curious maybe to hear you and to also link it that inner vision and inner clarity is so related to to movement through the body and energy, as I spoke earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking as you're talking, I'm thinking about my trajectory from, 8 years old to 18 to 28 to, what will be 38 in a few years. Um, and I think obviously time and experience has something to do with this and my own reflection of all of that and piecing together bits and pieces. But if I look at strictly the movement piece and how it's evolved over the course of my life, I think being in sports since the age of 6, um, understanding the fundamentals of football, which is what I mostly played, baseball here and there, and then track in
Unknown
high
caller.
school. Like there were um, clear ways to move to be effective, and although my training was diverse in how the movements were, those were already established movements that people before me had laid the path for. And now I was just training my body to be able to do those same movements. I wasn't necessarily creating anything new to the sport or to the space. It was more so saying, okay, that person moved like that. So if I move more like that, I'll have more opportunities to juke someone out on the field or to get out of a tackle or to get faster down the field. And so that was, 6 to 21. And then the 20s, it was more of like, I guess, a maintenance phase. I wasn't really doing anything new. It was just a continuation of what I had always done. And then when I got into my 30s, it was the recognition of diverse movement and being able to pick up and do any sort of movement the way that I wanted, whether it was carrying something, climbing something, pushing something, fighting something. It became more about how do I stay ready and centered as often as I can. And with that, that has opened the doors to so many other different types of movements, particularly in the last 3 years. I've done more diverse movements with mobility, flexibility, for longevity purposes than I ever have in my entire life. And it's also at that time also been a shift in my mind from performance to mastery. And mastery is a long game. Mastery is nuanced. Mastery is daily deposits every single day and feedback and adjustments and not being married to a particular way, but knowing that I'm committed to the direction and I'm committed to this for the long run and having to understand all the components involved to truly be a master of craft and therefore have to be a master of self. And so as I'm kind of looking at my map of my life, the most diverse movement is also simultaneously happening with my most diverse thought in expansion, in vision, and in what could I think about, and then also the selection of only allocating time to very few things, but thinking about those very few things expansively. That makes sense.
Totally. And for those of you that are not seeing James on video right now, but I want to emphasize how your body started to expand just speaking about this.
Yeah.
The excitement and the embodiment of that, like that level of mastery and your devotion to it just comes through your body. And that's also where it's like, yeah, it feels truthful, right? It was like really beautiful to just witness right now and to see your smile, and the joy that comes with that, to also landing in a place where you can be so precise of like, these are my focus point and I'm only going to devote myself to these, but I'm going to expand into these, like to going into the depths. And that creates the same response in me, like, I'm like, I want to go into the depths. When I have conversations with people right now, I feel like even the first time when we spoke, before actually going to Warrior, we just went like, boom, right into the deep end. That's where I feel so alive. My body is like, wow. it's like activated from that depth.
Mm.
And it's true, like why, and that is to kind of create another like thread here. Why is it important to be always in tune with your body and to move your body? Because your sensitivity to tracking subtle changes within how you're sensing, within how the sensations in your body, and how you're able to pick them up. Where is contraction? Where is expansion? How does that feel like in my body? Where do I notice certain tinglings? Where do I notice heat, cold, and how is it related to what's happening around me, the types of movement that I'm practicing? It continues to sharpen your awareness, and it continues to allow you to go into the depths and to really be like in a mastery of yourself as well. And again, within that vessel of that you were born into, that you get to experience life through, and allow that to be a continued, as you were making the example of, when I expand in my mind, my body expands, but also when I expand in my body, my mind expands.
Hmm.
To be this ever changing and ever moldable, for the positive or the negative, mass, as I said earlier, mass of molecules and atoms and being that is just, we have to look after ourselves, and we have to devote our awareness and attention to the things that really matter in our lives. And I'm saying this, and I'm saying it also for myself always,
Hmm.
I am pretty good at making strong priorities, but I'm also human and I slip. And that part of me, I also bring into that space right here, because if I didn't, again, I put it deeper into the shadow, and best believe that I'm going to slip more and more and more. And I don't want that. It's like, yes, I can name and I can say that I also slip, and that part of me is also here.
Hmm. Yeah. Thank you for that reflection in observing how my body was moving, because I definitely noticed that I took up more space.
Yeah.
And, if you go study any sort of communication for a degree, or just to just get better at it, you'll without too hard of a search realize that most of our communication is nonverbal. And so when you have a better relationship with your body, you're able to follow the body, and or the body can follow the mind in articulating messages, and that's maybe where charisma starts to come online, and this uh, energetic like attraction that can happen from what one person's able to generate and pull from or share with somebody, that can make one more influential, in intimate circles and abroad. And so that's also something I think I've noticed, is that when I'm in the zone, if you will, or I'm in flow, like whether I'm, in a conversation, or I'm on stage, or I'm working with an athlete or whatever, uh, I take up more space, and if I look at the animal kingdom and how and what space means, the animals that are more confident or want to protect their space or let someone else know that they're there, they take up more space. They get taller, they puff up, they change their body posture to be more upright, and so I think there's an element there that one could think about. And then also, I heard the other day Dr. Michael Gervais talk about this. He was the Seattle Seahawks sports psychologist, talk about the the body of what, like, when our body is in a certain position, it is geared towards fighting. And that's where the shoulders are forward and the head is down. And if you think about what position people are in almost all day, every day with their phones, they're looking down and their shoulders are hunched forward. And neurobiologically, what's happening there is these fight or flight hormones are being flooded through the system constantly. And so that also is something to be mindful of. How we hold our bodies makes room for the emotional states that we get to experience and or hold on to, depending on the situation, what's needed, and what we want. So then this body becomes an instrument, like very much like a piano. You play a piano to get a certain melody. Well, you move your body a certain way to get a certain emotional resonance. And so I thought those were some really cool points to add to what you were saying.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I want to add um, someone that I recently discovered. I have a little bit of an obsession about well, kind of any most of the things that come through with the body and psychology, mixing psychology with it, right? And then also understanding behaviors and yeah, how the body constantly speaks. And
Hmm.
I've been following this he used to be an FBI agent. His name is Marco Navarro, I believe. Um, and he's written amazing books. I've listened to his audiobooks, but he has a beautiful way of transmitting this knowledge that he has gained from over, I think, 30 years working as a yeah, FBI agent, holding multiple interrogations, and just like all the little things that he's been able to pick up, and then how that translates into a business conversation, and then he's beautifully dissecting it into, like, obviously the hands and the arms, the posture and what they do, the torso itself, how it rotates or places itself, the feet. Literally, you can determine so much truth or not truth, deception in a way, from how the feet are positioned, or if they are actively tapping a little bit, or if they're just in complete stillness. All of these things, they are constantly communicating to us, and I'm just really obsessed with, because I can energetically sense things very easily, and where truth is alive or not, or where truth is even stuck in someone's body, I can, like, just tune into it. However, to have even another layer of literally being able to just purely physically see it, how it plays out, is incredible. And yeah, if that's something anyone's interested in diving into more.
Love that. Beautiful. Well, as we begin to wind down here, what are any last minute ideas, thoughts that you feel would be helpful to share with the audience, whether it's an idea that you think would help them in their life or something that you are creating that you think would be cool for some of the listeners to partake in? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm gonna take up this invitation and to share about, yeah, two or three things that I'm, like, really passionate about right now, and that I'm also creating in this shift that I've been through in my career, and that I'm still moving through, from performance to deeper embodiment. And I've been really, as I was mentioning earlier, I've noticed over the years, even working as a movement artist, as a coach and a choreographer, a lot of men would come into my space and actually feel really comfortable in the way I was, yeah, transmitting and translating movement for them, to make it more accessible and to not feel like they still felt self-conscious maybe, but in a way that's like, oh, I can work with this. This doesn't feel too alienated for me, or like too rigid in a way. I can somehow allow myself to soften into this exploration. And from that place, I've been really realizing my devotion to the masculine and to the men in this world that are ready to step into a field of deeper embodied power and embodied truth. That means a willingness to meet themselves in the wholeness of themselves. And so I've been working on just, yeah, holding and creating spaces for men that feel drawn to that, to be more in embodied power, like power from an integrated self. And yeah, so if anyone is interested, or if there are any men out there that I feel connected to what I've shared today, and that are curious, even curiosity, allow yourself to go down, that route, follow it, because there's a resonance, and there's something to be explored for you, to something to step in deeper. And if it's with me and through me, beautiful. And if it's through another source, I celebrate that 100%. And then the other thing that I am still so deeply passionate about is to I'm an artist in my soul and in my heart, and it's the world that I come from, and I know the struggles of it. I know the beauty of it. I know everything about it because it's such a lived experience. And I've also been always deeply devoted to my own transformation, and to be able to combine these two things into something that I can offer back to my community, but also other people that are stepping into the position of being a coach like ourselves, or like a guide and a facilitator, to really drop deeper into the essence of what it is that they are holding as medicine for others, rather than what they are doing and the tools that they have and the method that they've been able to establish. It's like, can you let go of the method and become the medicine yourself, so that in any space that you enter, any client that is inviting you into their space, that is summoning you, you know and you trust that just through that resonance of being invited into that space, there's a catalyst already happening for transformation, because of you also seeing yourself as the transmission itself. And so I've been working for years, but now it's been coming together on what is for now an online program that is called The Art of Embodied Transmission. That is for artists, creatives, but also for facilitators, guides, coaches that want to step into that space of really feeling confident in being the medicine and the transmission itself, rather than their skill set, their tools, and what they can, their CVs,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Mm.
Paleta, thank you for your work. Thank you for your insight. Thank you for your stories. And my hope is that anyone who's listened to this has even more reason to move differently, move beautifully, move simply, just move nonetheless. And thank you for your time. And my your abundance continue to flow. And I appreciate you.